Hello, everyone. Ambassador Terriers, Win Nichols here on in a different way of doing 2 Minute Tuesdays, so to speak. I have my very good friend and colleague, author Henry Wang, with me, and we're getting ready to launch his seventh book. Yeah, that's right, seventh book. Henry, I'm excited.
Hi, Terry. I'm excited too. I'm looking forward to our podcast together. I remember the very good podcast we had on the launch of my last six book about a year ago.
Yeah. Roadmap for Sustainable Business. That was a good one. That was a good one.
That's
Well,
right.
ladies and
Yeah, that was the sixth book. Yeah, the roadmap for sustainable business. Time
there we go.
flies. This has been a
Yeah,
bestseller for the last year or so. Yeah, and
yeah,
I've
I
given
love
a
it.
lot,
I
invited
love
to
it.
give a lot of speech about it internationally to various CEOs and companies. Yeah, so
Uh-huh.
I'm looking forward to re- repeating the same thing with the new book.
And so am I. Watching your journey all these years, my friend, we've been friends for a very long time.
That's right. I
I
really
want to say
appreciate our
sometime
friendship.
around the famous lockdown of 2020, something like that. So
That's
yeah, it's
right. We
been
started this from COVID. Yeah,
yeah, world thought leaders, I think, with our friend Simon Haig. So,
that's
Simon, if you're
correct.
watching, got plugged, buddy. So, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit about Henry from his book. He's an international advisor, author, speaker, extensive high level business expertise globally. Former Shell China, then SABIC director in Riyadh, several boards. He is on the staff as a professor in London, England, with a couple of colleges and universities, travels the world. We could spend this whole half hour on talking about what this guy does on a nonstop basis, and I'll tell you, my friend, it's quite a joy to watch you. You know, in your life and the great work that you're doing with sustainability, which rings my bell right up front. Okay, because without Earth, the rest of the SDGs don't really matter too much, right? Earth is always going to be here, but that doesn't mean humans are unless we get things turned around and turned around in a serious way. And you and I have talked about that many times. So let's dive into this great book of yours and carbon neutrality and climate sustainability, impacts and challenges. Tell us a little bit about that, my friend.
Yeah, thank you very much, Terry. I think these are very important topics, carbon neutrality and climate sustainability, because our planet. Last week, I was invited to speak to a high level sustainability summit held in the business district of London in Canary Wharf. I think to the 150 CEOs and senior executives there, you know, we agree the world is really at a very dangerous time. We've already breached the 1.5 degrees C temperature rise. So we really now have to do everything we can to reduce carbon emissions so that we can achieve the carbon neutrality targets that and commitments that 194 countries have signed in the Paris Agreement.
Absolutely. And the challenge is, we're getting some people, Americans are not real happy that the current administration is not doing too well to help this right now. But he too will pass at some point. We'll get rid of that guy and his administration. Um, we could go a long time talking about that one just by itself. But there has been some great changes in some of the other countries that are very encouraging. And yes, they're smaller countries with smaller populations, but they embraced they embraced climate change and made significant strides. So, international carbon neutrality and climate. Talk about some of the sustainability policies that you talk about in your book.
Yeah, I think it is great that in the Paris Agreement, 194 countries have signed the Paris Agreement, and now in my discussions with the with G20, B20 task force, and the global experts, uh, 135 countries have now put forward their carbon neutrality policies and targets. They have committed to these, and they are now implementing new policies and strategies to achieve their carbon neutrality targets. I mean, you mentioned that some countries are going back and also, threatening to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. But the majority of the countries are very determined to achieve their carbon neutrality goals because they see that these are very important. They are suffering themselves from very extreme climate incidents like typhoon, heavy rainfall, high temperatures, cold winters, and things like that. So actually, this is a important area where a lot of countries are working extremely hard and actively on implementing new policies. And these includes clean energy transition, electric cars, minimizing carbon emissions, and things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And countries, chapter 3 here it was kind of interesting. Countries' carbon neutrality and their climate sustainability pathways. Can you explain a little bit what sustainability pathways in this regard is?
Yeah, this really in this chapter, in the third chapter, I go from the policies, then further down, drill down deeper into the actual strategies that countries are putting in place. Yeah, and many countries are doing this. And in fact, some countries have already achieved carbon neutrality. Two countries in the world has already achieved carbon neutrality, and other countries are very soon to achieve the carbon neutralities in the next 5 to 10 years. So these are countries who are really doing very well. And their strategies include clean energy transition, which is phasing out fossil fuel and replacing it with clean energy like solar, wind, hydropower. And also, these countries are also pushing electrification or decarbonization of their transport sector because transport is a heavy emission area. So they're electrifying their cars, they are changing their public transport buses and trains into electric trains and electric buses. And these are all helping to reduce their carbon emission and helping them to achieve their carbon neutrality goals.
Not to mention green urbanization. Some of the cities in
Absolutely.
Indonesia, they've encouraged and given financial breaks to countries or companies that make the sides of their buildings green, so that
Absolutely.
we keep the heat down and things like that. And that all counts. Global clean energy transition and carbon neutrality pathways. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, clean energy transition is really a very important policy and strategy that many countries are pushing. I think many countries have, in accordance with the Paris Agreement commitments, have enacted policies to promote uh, uh, clean energy like solar, wind, hydropower, and then to phase out the fossil fuel. I mean, there's been tremendous innovation in the last 10 years in renewable energy technology and innovations. And according to the International Renewable Energy Association, which did a global survey, they have now showed that the innovations and cost reductions have enabled that the cost of power generated from clean energy is now competitive to electrical power that is generated by oil and gas. So this is tremendous. This is really a watershed moment in which countries can no longer sort of argue that it is more expensive to generate power using clean energy, because international realities and statistics have shown that this is no longer the case.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. You know, green transport, carbon neutrality, and circular economy pathways has gone huge leaps since your last book. And it's almost every week you hear or read about something along this line. Could you expand on that a little bit in that green transport area?
Yeah, green transport is a very important area. I was very honored to be invited to join the G20 and B20 task force to work on these areas under the leadership of the G20 leaders. Yeah. And we've found, I mean, together with international experts, we found that the transport sector internationally is the second most high emission sector after electrical power generation. Yeah. And that's because a lot of cars, trucks, planes, and others are using fossil fuel, and they are emitting a lot of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, and other areas. But in there's been a lot of innovations and a lot of developments in this area. I think electrical cars, as you know, is really developing very fast, and in many countries now, the sale of new cars, in the sale of new cars, electric cars are higher than petrol cars. And also, many countries have now enacted policies or announced targets that they will phase out petrol or fossil-driven cars by 2035 or 2030, in that sort of time frame. I think these will then help to reduce carbon emission from the transport sector. In addition to electrical cars, there's also other areas, other clean fuel, such as hydrogen, biofuel, and other areas, which will also help to greenify the transport sector.
Absolutely. I love the use of cooking oils and things like that to in transportation and using lowering the carbon footprint. You and my favorite topic whenever we get together is smart cities. Doing now, talk to us about smart cities, my friend.
No, smart cities are a very important development in this area. And I think the mayor of the largest cities in the world recognize the importance of this. And they have formed a very important international coalition called the C40 network, which is actually more than it was initially 40 of the biggest city in the world, but now it's grown to be more than 100. That includes the city mayors from UK, from US, from Europe, from China, and they all meet together during COP and other meetings to share best practices. And it is very clear that there is lots of things we could do in our cities to improve the quality of life in the city, to improve to reduce carbon emissions, and to improve the air quality, which will actually lead to many benefits, like improve health for the city workers. It opens up even new areas as cities goes ahead with their clean energy transition. There are new jobs being created in clean energy and also in green finance. And these cities are also growing very well. I mean, example, one real example I've given in the book is really Copenhagen, which has really pursued their carbon neutrality goals and to become a smart green city. And they are not the only one. Many cities are doing very, very well in waste minimization, like San Francisco in the US, and also in China. There are many cities where with waste recycling up to 70%. And these are fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, I'm all over it. Copenhagen, ladies and gentlemen, that's not a little town in the Netherlands. This is a major metropolitan area. It's not so tall, but it's very wide. And I've been there several times myself. It's a beautiful city. And they're serious about their canals and everything like that, keeping it clean. And so that's wonderful. Carbon solutions and carbon neutrality pathways, my friend. What do we got going there?
Yeah, these are new technology areas which are very important if we want to achieve carbon neutrality and to in the next 10 years, in the next 20, 30 years. And these are really a new area. It started with carbon capture and sequestration, where you basically capture the CO2 and try to store it underground. And there's a lot of projects are going on in US, UK, Europe, China, in these areas, mainly with a lot of oil and gas companies. Yeah. But in addition to that, there are now actually innovative ways which are developing. People have said, well, if we're capturing the CO2 and storing it, why don't we treat it and then we can turn into valuable products? And a lot of innovations and a lot of things are going on. And in fact, I was personally involved when I was advisor to the Saudi prince and also the director of SABIC. We successfully, SABIC implemented one of the biggest carbon captures and utilization projects in the Middle East. And it was in one of the biggest chemical complex in the world, and they capture all the CO2 from there, and then they purified it, and then they are selling the CO2 as valuable CO2 for beverages, soda factories, for also for food and for other areas, and they have calculated that the things they're doing is equivalent to the amount of CO2 captured by 11 million trees. So this is a wonderful achievement. And I've shared details of that in the case studies in my book.
You bet, you bet. Well, the Saudis are doing some great stuff in this. They're taking care of smart business and smart cities, and really looking forward to the future, and because they recognize that oil was not necessarily the future, and so they're looking at diversifying and things like that. And so this fits really well into your next chapter, which is green finance. So let's
Absolutely.
let's let's talk about green finance a little bit.
Well, green finance is really one of the fastest growing area in finance and investment globally. I think this is happening in the United States, in Europe, in UK, and also in Asia and in China. I mean, a lot of companies now are pushing ahead with green bonds. I think Hong Kong has become one of the biggest areas for green bond, the same as London, as well as New York. Despite the changes in the White House policies that you've already mentioned. But these are things which are going on and will go on because the growth in this area is really unstoppable. Yeah, and in fact, it generates a lot of new jobs. I think the International Renewable uh, Energy Association has estimated that you know, green investment and finance in the last 10 years has already created 10 million new jobs around the world. And many of these, you know, are in China, India, but also in the US and Europe and UK and other areas. Yeah, so these are very important green finance and new economical growth areas.
Absolutely. AI is starting to play a part in that
Absolutely.
too. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people are afraid of AI just because it's new. Well, like anything else, you've got to play with it a little bit to figure out um, how do you really use it and how do you control it from being just turning into a wild weed. You know, there's certain things there too, but you know that this too shall pass. AI is here. You know,
No, you are
and
absolutely right, Terry. I was invited specifically to talk about that to the 150 CEO in London last week about this, and they raised this very, very key issue that you raised. Yeah, and I mean, AI is, you know, many of them argue that AI is a huge risk to climate change and energy. And in many ways, it's true because AI uses a huge amount of energy, in not only in the data modeling stage, but also in the inference stage where they are answering questions. And they also
Mhm.
have water footprints and carbon footprints and other things. But AI can be a force for good and opportunity as well. I mean, some of the leading IT companies in the world are already using AI to reduce the energy consumption of the data center by 40%. You know, DeepMind is helping to reduce energy consumptions in the data center of one of the leading company in the world by over 40%. And this is, you know, a real benefit and a real fact.
Yep. Totally agree. Let's talk about corporate carbon neutrality, my friend. Let's talk about the corporations.
Absolutely. I think many corporations you know, in the COP meetings, many CEO has also committed together with their country to achieving carbon neutrality targets. These include the Fortune 500 companies and all the biggest, and also some of the mid-sized and the smaller companies as well, because they see that this is a very important thing, not only for their business, but for their sustainable future. You know, they realize that they cannot go away, continue with their current business model, continue to use excessive energy and generate excessive CO2 because, you know, their investors and consumers will simply not support them. So the CEO recognized that they have to be proactive in changing their carbon strategy so that you see now a lot of companies are following very active in their carbon neutrality strategies and actively pushing ahead with strategies. And many CEOs are able, who are ahead of others in pushing this, can already demonstrate to their shareholders and investors and their competitors that their carbon neutrality and green energy strategies are actually helping to boost their profitability on a sustainable basis. And these are real results, which are, you know, for everybody to see.
Yes. Well, we've reached the end of the chapter run here, my good friend. Carbon neutrality and the circular economies innovations. Talk to us about some of these very cool things that are happening right now.
Absolutely. I think to carbon innovation and circular economy are very, very important things. And in fact, today, this afternoon, I was in a major meeting with on circular economy together with experts from around the world, from Japan, from Australia, from UK and other areas. And we all agreed that uh, circular economy and carbon neutrality and net zero emission and climate sustainability go hand in hand. I think, there are wonderful things that are going on in uh, in the world with innovations. I think we already talk about innovations helping to reduce the cost of electricity, green electricity generated from clean energy like solar and wind down to the same level as brown electricity or dirty electricity generated by oil and coal. And there are wonderful things. I think we had this afternoon the CEO of a global CEO of NGO, which is really recycling, helping to recycle everything. Yeah, clothes and other area. And many new companies are now furnishing their boardrooms and their showrooms with recycled tiles and things like that. This is really good. And this is
Absolutely.
showing that they are really people are walking the talk.
Walking the talk. Yes, they are. Just like you, my friend, walking the talk around the world.
Thank you.
Well,
Both of
ladies and
us. You do a lot as well. I really admire your work.
thank you, my friend. I try to stay active, as they say. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a fantastic book, and it is for sale in major bookstores worldwide right now, and it is worth the grab. And that's Successful Pathways to Carbon Neutrality and Climate Sustainability. We posted earlier on my LinkedIn feed what that's all about, and I encourage you to buy the book. Not just to help my friend, because my friend is a very cool guy and first rate in the climate world, first rate, my dear friend. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening in. Put your comments in there, and we'll watch for them, and we'll respond as soon as it comes. Henry, thank you so much for hopping on and talking about this fabulous new book.
Thank you, Terry, for a really great joy to talk with you and with your wonderful wife, Linda, as well. I think you are all doing wonderful things. And I'm glad that we're working together to save the planet and make it a better place to live in for our grandchildren.
Thank you, dear friend. Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Bye for now.
Bye.